COLPM, College of Law Practice Management fellows are really using AI. Some of you already know what the College of Law Practice Management is. In fact, you may be a fellow or have joined other events. Others of you may be joining the College of Law Practice Management for the first time for an activity. So just to take one moment to explain to you this fantastic group that you are joining today on Friday. The College of Law Practice Management is a nonprofit organization, and the focus of the college is to really inspire and promote the practice of law. And there are folks involved as fellows within the organization who span every part of the ecosystem. So we've got lawyers, judges, law professors, administrators, consultants, officers of the government, in-house legal operations professionals, and all sorts of others. Everyone is united by a common cause, which is dedication to improving law practice management and also the professional quality of the practice of law. So lofty goals, and ones that we intend to fulfill through a whole variety of ways. One of them an educational series, this one that you've chosen to join today. There is also an annual gathering, the Futures Conference, coming up at the end of February this year. There is still time if you're interested to check that out and register. And our fearless support from Debbie O'Connell, she will circulate that link along with the materials after this call if you're interested in checking that out. It's phenomenal and interesting and scintillating, all the things that I hope you will find today to be. So let's get into it. We have a stellar panel today, and I'm certain that some of them may already be familiar to you, maybe all of them, but we're really lucky to have 4 different fellows from the College of Law Practice Management who are here today to talk real talk about how they're using AI. I am here as your humble moderator. My name is Farrah Pepper. My job is Chief Legal Innovation Counsel at Marsh McLennan, but I'm extremely honored to also be a fellow in the College of Law Practice Management and to sit on the Board of Trustees. And so I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm just as eager as you to listen to what all of our excellent speakers have to tell us. Now, you can see their faces up here on the screen and their organizations. Rather than go through that laundry list, I think it's more exciting if we just get into it and let each person tell you a little bit about where they are, their role, their journey in the course of sharing this with you. Now, logistically, if you have questions, we encourage it, but we would ask that you submit those questions through the chat functionality. We've reserved some time at the end so that we can answer as many questions as possible. So let's dive in. So we're going to start with the first shining face you see on the screen here. Now, Kunoor Chopra, the entrepreneur herself, I love that pun. She is here to talk about her role, dual role really, and the exciting things that are happening in her world, the uses she sees for AI via Cloud Court. So Kunoor, over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, just briefly, who you are and why this, why now?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Farrah. So excited to talk to you. And I, along with Farrah, I'm also on the Board of Trustees for the College of Law Practice Management. So as you mentioned, I have 2 roles. Oops, I'm sharing the wrong screen. I have 2 roles. So I'm one of the co-founders of Elevate, which is an alternative legal services provider. And I've built part of the business there on the legal services side. And about a year ago, I was looking at some investments, and I met a company called Cloud Court. And I'm just throwing the slide up there. So I'm at Cloud Court, and one of the things I've been focused on at Elevate was litigation. And one of the things we do, at Elevate is we look at how to bring efficiency and optimization across kind of all legal work streams: litigation, contracts, M&A compliance, IP. And I was really focused and have been very focused on the litigation side. Nicole is my colleague, and she'll talk about some of the things we're doing at Elevate. But when I met Cloud Court, I thought, wow, this is really going to bring another level of efficiency that we haven't seen before, and something that I can bring into my toolkit at Elevate. So I joined their advisory board. Loved what they were doing. As I was bringing them to customers, customers were thinking, wow, this is an amazing game changer. And I thought, gosh, this is a great company. I'd love to work with them. And I love working with Elevate. And they loved kind of, what I was able to bring to the company. And so we basically came to an agreement between two companies where I would take on a part-time role. Still trying to figure that part out. But basically, I joined Cloud Court as their chief strategy officer to grow the company, which, as many of you know, I love doing. So their technology was really focused on litigation, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And what I'll share with you is the challenge that we were trying to solve, why it was such a big deal, and what the benefits could be to you. So really excited to do this talk with you. So I'm going to go really fast and try to emulate my colleague Michael, who and his interauctioneer. So let's go. So litigation teams are storytellers. And just to really kind of, I guess, back up a second, this tool, just to put it in your mind, is basically think e-discovery, but for deposition testimony, trial, arbitration testimony. So litigation teams are storytellers. They tell their stories using two kinds of evidence, right? Documents and testimony. Most of that evidence, the documents, they are what they are. They were created before the case was filed, meaning that evidentiary record for those has been set. Testimony is different. Testimony is a blank slate. When you take a devastating depo and diligently defend your witness, you've created better evidence. Now, we're not talking about fabricating testimony, but just being able to influence the testimony and have that control over that piece of the evidence. So what are the challenges we're trying to solve? Everything having to do with testimony is time-consuming, expensive, and impactful. Now, this kind of gives you a sense of where are all the touch points, right? The life cycle of testimony. There's a lot of it. The depo itself, cross-pollinating, kind of sharing that knowledge. What if people leave? How do you now cross-pollinate that knowledge again? Create motion practice, creating reports, of course, the trial. It's endless, right? In terms of all of the different touch points for testimony. Again, think back to e-discovery, how much that you similarly, there were so many touch points for documents. And who's touching it? Outside counsel, in-house counsel, paralegals, experts, court reporters, et cetera, right? A lot of touch points, a lot of potential expenses associated with it. So this is the old way, right? Banker's boxes full of transcripts and you having to look at that index at the end and thinking, okay, where was this topic discussed? And now you're trying to figure out across 5 depots or 10 depots or 10 witnesses. That was extremely time consuming. And then you had an innovation. You had computers, which helped you kind of get that into a tool, but still you're control Fing your way through it. Now you're pulling up one depo and pulling up another depo and pulling up another depo, but at least on the screen, you can control F your way through it and, search and find different topics, still time consuming. So we're going to talk about the new way in a minute, but what are the economics we're talking about? So this just gives you, many of folks probably in the audience are legal ops professionals. And if you think about from a billing code perspective, if you look at the invoices, these are some of the task codes that are associated with testimony related tasks. This is an actual invoice related to depo work from a firm, North Fulbright, and this shows the depo charges. So this is just the charges for getting the transcript. Now, these were the charges associated with the attorney's fees. So just 11 hours of testimony-related tasks were almost $5,000. Extrapolated over the course of that one depo, all of the tasks, we looked at the task codes, was $160,000. This shows the video costs. So those add up, right? Now, what is the solution? So Cloud Court has a tool called Gibson, and you'll see kind of the use cases as I talk through this, but it leverages artificial intelligence tempered by actual intelligence, right? We need the humans in the loop to help teams manage, understand, and mine testimony for advantages. So conceptually, like e-discovery, it helps litigation professionals make sense of large amounts of information, but it's focused on testimony. So let's take a look at how it actually works. Now, if you've taken a depo, you're involved in it. Now, this is the content a lawyer is actually recalling after a deposition. Now, Cloud Court uses topic extraction. We're not a Gen AI technology. We have Gen AI elements if we're going to do depo summaries, but we use natural language processing. So, through topic extraction, this shows you some of the topics that were pulled. But this is what a lawyer recalls after a deposition. They go back to their team. This is the content that was actually shared with the team, right? We can only capture so much in our minds in terms of information. So this was what was relayed from that last slide. This was the content that was actually in the deposition. Mind blown, a lot of information. Now, what happened to all of this, right? What if we look across multiple depositions? 5 depositions, I mean, there's no way a human can actually process this level of information. So with Cloud Court, right, you're looking at an enormous amount of data that is hidden in transcripts. What Gibson or Cloud Court's tool does is analyzes the testimony, extracts the data, and makes it interactive. So using Gibson, you can kind of really hone in on just what the testimony is. Now, you don't have to spend all of that time trying to figure it out. And then now you can figure out what to do with it. You can avoid testimonial inconsistencies with your witnesses, and you can help create and exploit testimonial inconsistencies with your opposition, right? So this goes to the how do we influence case outcomes. Now, if you see on the left side, the top bar, and of course we can show demos, another time, but the top bar shows across 5 witnesses where different testimony went across kind of the chronology, was discussed across the chronology of the depo. We also capture witness taxonomies. Was the witness aligned, adverse, expert? If an expert, what type of expert? And you can see basically the topics are in the kind of those boxes. The bigger the box, the more that topic was discussed. Does not mean that that means it was the most important topics. Often attorneys, when they they'll ask a question and they get the answer they want, they move on. So even that small box at the bottom can be really important. Gen AI probably wouldn't have caught that. On the right side, those are the Q&A pairs. So when you click on either the cloud, kind of the cloud version, or the topics in the boxes, you can now move to the Q&A pairs, which are discussing those specific topics. Again, you can extrapolate across as many depositions as you want, and then you can actually go to the actual page that was discussed. So
Kunoor, if I could jump in. First of all, I feel very personally attacked by that picture of the banker's boxes. That is taking me back to real memories that I have tried to suppress. So when we think about what the use case is here, who's your audience? Is this something that
Absolutely.
is primarily for law firms to free associates from the shackles of having to pore over deposition transcripts and put together summaries? Or do you see the audience for something like this as something else?
So the audience is definitely anyone who's touching the depo. So it could be in-house, but generally it's going to be the outside counsel, right? Because the in-house teams are going to retain outside counsel to lead their cases, right? To manage their cases. So the outside counsel are going to be the ones. So looking at those billing codes, those are tasks that the outside counsel attorneys are doing. So yes, it's to basically put it in their hands. Again, think about the workflow of e-discovery, and I think we're going to be applying that to all types of AI now. So if you look at the workflow for e-discovery, most of that used to be done at the law firm, very expensive. So then you kind of unbundled and said, hey, for document review, first pass privilege, let's move it to another provider. Well, first of all, let's use this technology and let's move it to another provider. So similarly here, it's like, okay, let's not just do that manually or control Fing. Let's use this tool to first be able to find the information. So let's not spend all those hours trying to find it. And now that we've found it very quickly at the click of a button, now we use that to prepare the motions, prepare our witnesses. I mean, you can do depo summaries at the click of a button on the tool. So you don't need to separately prepare depo summaries. The tool will do that for you. But it's really now to use the testimony and to do all those other tasks that we highlighted in that bill of $160,000, right? And I'll show you kind of what the savings were associated for a couple of use cases of using the tool. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It sure does. Thank you, Kunoor. And we've got about, I would say, 1 minute left for this
All right,
segment.
cool.
So hit us with your best shot.
All right, so you can use it to basically influence case outcomes. This shows for a pilot we did for a Fortune 50 company. Look at the scope on the bottom, 17,000 pages of information, 6,900 Q&A pairs. Basically, we were able to use it to find 55 instances of contradictions and 33 instances of expert witness admission of errors. The fees that were associated with testimony-related tasks over the entire spend related to this one product was $63 million, or 26% of the spend. Testimony-related tasks. For that, again, part of that same pilot, we basically looked at the routine activities, reviewing, drafting, analyzing, summarizing, all of those associated with using that testimony led to $42 million in spend. We did a spend analysis and came to the realization that if you looked at outside counsel fees and all of the opportunities, there were $24 million in savings that potentially could be saved, which was 8.4% of the total outside counsel spend. So a lot of ways to basically, again, kind of help influence outcomes by preparing witnesses. But in the end, yes, we are trying to moneyball testimony. We are trying to figure out your adversary's habits and use those habits to create powerful testimonial record. So really looking at kind of the end of the ROI and the savings, that I told you I talk about one use case. Fortune 500 consumer goods company retained Norton Rose Fulbright for their matter. They had budgeted $250,000 for depot designations. Using Cloud Court, they spent $25,000. That Fortune 50 company that I just mentioned was looking at 81% savings on the course of their litigation. And another attorney said, I can't even imagine handling cases without Cloud Court. So hopefully using Cloud Court, one, you have the efficiency, but people come for the efficiency and stay for the advantage. And hopefully you'll have more of the unicorn verdicts and fewer of those kind of verdicts that just blow up in your face. So thank you.
I think Farrah may have frozen.
We lost her. All right. Let's move on. Yes.
We lost her for a moment. So I think I'm next up, Kunoor. If you're good, I'll move on and maybe we can ask each other some questions at the very end today. Okay, here I am. So I'm Marla Crawford. I'm the General Counsel of Cimplifi. And we are a full service e-discovery and contract analytics lifecycle management company. My background really was in litigation and e-discovery. I worked in big law for 22 years, in-house for 11. And so it was interesting to me when I joined Cimplifi to just dealing with my slides to learn about something a little bit different. And I was fascinated by how to apply some of the technology from my old school e-discovery life into new areas. Contract analytics lifecycle management actually became near and dear to my heart as a general counsel, and I've used both in my practice. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit today about that, what it is, what we're seeing from our clients, how it's enhancing their lives, their careers, and how it's made my personal work as a general counsel just that much better. So there's really two sides. There's contract lifecycle management and contract analytics. Contract lifecycle management is the pre-execution to execution phase of contracting. How do you use technology to better negotiate and draft and maintain your data storage of contracts? And contract analytics is using the AI and building models and analytics to answer questions about your contracts. And despite my own self thinking that I knew how to do everything the old school way, I've been in a couple of situations where I realized that this technology was a game changer for me. And I'm gonna put the slides up. I may not talk to them exactly, but the slides are here, and I'm gonna give them to Debbie at the end so that she can circulate them when she circulates information about this webinar. So contract lifecycle management, what does it do? It creates automated workflows. It can digitize your playbooks. It can provide key provisions. It can show you what is accepted, what is acceptable in terms of key clauses. It can provide reporting to you. It eliminates the need for manual entry. So if you have, for example, a corporation that is entering things about their contracts, clauses, deadlines, dates, it eliminates all that. It modernizes it. It helps you with your compliance. When I started at Cimplifi, I had contracts everywhere. And as the first GC of this company, I was trying to learn about our contracts. I was trying to learn about the different types of contracts we had, what we negotiated, what was important to the company. And other than me, whose job was it to look at this? Because I was not prepared to do all of every contract every time. And what I learned was there were certain people in the company that had responsibilities that were not for me. Maybe pricing, data security, things that other people had to look at. And I had a few very important clauses that I wanted to look at in every single contract. Payment, termination, limitation on liability, indemnification. And so I had my contract analytics lifecycle management team. We call it CALM at Cimplifi. We've actually trademarked that, which is a little bit funny because the head of our division, Charles Post, is the least calm person you'll ever meet. But I had the team write for me some requirements, and then I implemented a CLM program at Cimplifi. People said to me this was going to be very hard to adopt. Our sales force wasn't going to adopt it. They weren't going to use the templates, and they weren't going to go through the process. It's a little bit of a carrot and stick situation. You kind of have to beg, but then in the end, I just wouldn't sign any contracts that weren't coming through the CLM. It has been a huge improvement in my daily life. I have automated workflows. It shows me the clauses I care about, how they differ from my provisions that are in my contract. It's very great for third-party paper. It shows me where my risks are, what I need to negotiate, what I should pay attention to. It provides storage for me and all in one place. So when I have a question, when I'm looking for a playbook, anything, it's all there for me. And I can say that it's probably reduced the time for me of dealing with this whole company's contracts by at least 30%, and I'm being modest. We've also seen that our clients who have implemented this, it's enhanced their job responsibilities. Many people have gotten promoted from using this technology, and it has also given them insight across their enterprise, because if you roll it out in one division and it's so good and seamless, time to execution is reduced, that you're, becoming a little bit of a superstar in your organization. So we're very proud of that. The other side of our contract analytics lifecycle management work is contract analytics. This is a little bit more interesting, I'm going to say, because it's usually in relation to something that you have to do quickly. And in the past, it's taken a long time, been inefficient, been not accurate, and people are scrambling. So usually you're using a contract analytics scenario to answer questions about a group of contracts that you have a need to find answers to questions. I've done this. I had a scenario myself, and I'll tell you about it. But basically what the team does is they build models, iterative models, trying to understand what your data set looks like of contracts and what you're trying to answer. And this could be in an M&A, in a due diligence situation, in HIPAA, just to look for particular commercial terms, data privacy, cybersecurity, procurement, regulatory, third-party risk, really anything you can think of where you're going to have questions about what your contracts say, that historically you may have had a team of people review the contracts, tag and flag them by hand, create Excel spreadsheets for you, trying to find risks or answers to questions. I've listed here on this side scenarios where we have done contract analytics projects for our clients. My personal one that I'm going to tell you, because it was such a success story. So I had about 5,000 contracts, and I needed to answer the question, could we use a partner to do some weekend and overtime work for us on our e-discovery side? And as general counsel, I always get the questions nobody else wants to answer. It's sort of like a part of the job that I hadn't expected. And I said, well, I don't know. We have 5,000 contracts. They're not all the same. So I knew I had my team, and I asked my team to take the contracts and build the models. We took 5,000 contracts. They processed them the way you would on an e-discovery project. And they went back and forth with me. What are you looking for? Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? And I would say, yes, I want to see that. No, I don't want to see that. They ran the models through the 5,000 contracts. They came up with about 80 contracts that they thought hit on my problem areas. They loaded all the contracts for me into an e-discovery review tool. It was Relativity. They tagged these 80 documents. They highlighted for me the portions that were relevant. And I looked through them and personally read 17 contracts. The rest of them I knew as soon as I saw the clauses, not a problem, not a problem, not a problem. 17 contracts. This took 10 days. It took 10 days because it's my team doing my work and I came last because our clients always come first. If this had been a client project, it would have taken a couple of days. And so I became an evangelist of this technology. And I love speaking with our clients who have used it because the relief that they feel when we're able to use the technology to answer these questions, usually in a very tense scenario. There's a cyber incident, a data breach. Who do I have to notify, and how many days have I contracted to notify them? Go. You know, sometimes you're talking 24 hours. So using this technology is really a fantastic tool. And it's to me, it's the personal part of it, the help that a person can get to complete their job more efficiently, more effectively, and at a lower cost and greater accuracy. And I'm going to send this over to Evan, but I'm going to tee it up for you, man, because I really think if you put all of this together, you're talking knowledge management. If you have your contract lifecycle management tool, you're using your contract analytics and modeling to understand and know what's in your contracts, and you're keeping track of this, you are really creating a situation within the organization where you know information that is really critical to your enterprise. And the people who do this can truly be shining stars in the enterprise.
Love it. So I'm pretty much done now. So thanks. Farrah, are you back? Would you like to say anything? Or should we just roll with it?
Yes, I have overcome my unstable internet and I have rejoined. Thank you. Look, my job here is easy because you are all the shining stars and able to deftly moderate yourselves. I will add on and say, Marla, I appreciate that you had that personal experience. And so you're able to say, this isn't just something that my organization is promoting. This is something I've lived. And here are some great ideas. You know, I already have my wheels turning about large sets of data where we want intelligence like that. And so hopefully our attendees today are similarly inspired to think about how to apply this to their world. But yes, Evan, over to you. So knowledge management, a vast area. but what is your deep connection to it, and where do you think AI can help make it better?
Sure, sounds great. So just really quick overview. Evan Shenkman, I'm the Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at Fisher Phillips. I've been in the KM world and innovation world for 12, 13 years. I practiced law for 10 years before that as a labor and employment litigator and partner. But yeah, so KM is really all about getting the best information to our attorneys and our firm, helping them be better, smarter, faster, helping them be more prescient, predict what's likely to happen, likely outcomes, and so on. Data analytics, research, all of that really falls under knowledge management. And there are so many things in today's Gen AI and AI world that can help KM and innovation practitioners. So I thought it'd be helpful for me to just walk through some practice of law knowledge management uses for Gen AI that we're already having use at our firm, and then some business of law KM and innovation uses for Gen AI, and just sort of run through it there. So practice of law is probably the easier one because with a lot of this, it's essentially find a solution out there, get it, roll with it, and you're good to go. It's almost more low-hanging fruit. For us, we've been using Gen AI for ever since we had opportunities really, really early on before ChatGPT was out to help work with some companies, work with case techs to help them deploy co-counsel. And so we've been using Gen AI for legal research for years and years now. And now there are certainly other fantastic companies in the mix as well in that space. And the big difference between just natural language search, which is still really advanced compared to what it used to be, and Gen AI legal research is that we're no longer just trying to find a case. We're not using sentences to try to find a case or a couple cases to read. Gen AI research can actually find you cases, synthesize and analyze those cases, apply those cases to your facts, and give you a document that lays it all out for you, a research memo. It can be an advocate. It can be a research memo that tells you the arguments and the answers. And then you say, what are the arguments against that? And it could do that for you. So it really is getting to the next level. And we've been using co-counsel, which is now Westlaw Precision AI Assisted Research. We're using Vincent AI, which also does a fantastic job. And we're looking into many of these tools, but they're in the hands of our attorneys. Our attorneys use them every day, and they find them fantastic. We're also using Gen AI for summarizing, for document extraction, for some drafting, again, with co-counsel, with Vincent AI, with Trellis AI. And these are all tools that there's some overlap between them. So I would certainly urge you to see demos of them all. There's also Lexis Plus AI. See demos, see what you like, see what would work for the workflow of your attorneys. But I can say that attorneys, paralegals, research folks, they have completely taken to these tools. They use them responsibly and appropriately, and it makes their lives easier, and it gets our clients better answers more quickly, more thorough. They could spend more time really digging in, and they've been a big win. We're also piloting for practice of law use cases some Gen AI tools for drafting. We're using Gen AI tools for looking through case documents and so on. And again, there are lots of options out there, but they are in use, they're ready, they're available, and they've really been fantastic. There are also some tools that are listening in, or that can listen in on conversations and provide insights. We're working with a company called Verbit to do that for depositions. So listening in on what's happening at a deposition and saying, hey, by the way, what this person just said contradicts with what they testified 4 weeks ago in this deposition, or it contradicts with the documents that we've uploaded to this tool. And we're working on a design partnership with them. And the attorneys who have checked that out are really impressed. A company called Quirius, which is helping for other client conversations where it can help and not only be sort of a note taker, but provide insights and say, hey, sounds like this client is talking about, or this witness is talking about this topic. Here are some follow-up questions to ask. So these are sort of lots of disparate types of Gen AI tools, but all of them fall in the KM and innovation space. And all of them are sort of out there now for you to explore, try out, use, and really advance the ball for your clients, advance the ball for your attorneys, make their lives easier. So that's sort of practice of law stuff. I could talk for hours and hours about this because it's, there's a lot and it's all really exciting. But let me just talk about some of the business of law Gen AI use cases, because these are ones that maybe they're a little bit harder to build, but they also have a tremendous value on the actual organization that is your law firm and helping your law firm do things better, smarter, faster. So the first one that I want to talk about is our dinger system. So law firms are always really interested in knowing when their clients need help, right? Has your client been sued? Is your client the subject of an investigation by a government agency? Is your client the subject of a PAGA notice or whatever? So we built out a solution with a company called InOutsource and using Courthouse News and lots of other things coming together using APIs and using Gen AI. And it essentially scours all of these different sources a couple times a day, uses AI to compare them to our clients and our prospects, and it will then generate emails that go out to all of our attorneys who have a relationship with that client and prospect and say, hey, your client needs some help. Reach out to your client. By the way, click here to run data analytics on the judge or the opposing counsel. Click here to run a conflict check. So it gives you actionable stuff to do. And now we've just buttressed that tool with something just in the past week or so, working with Trellis AI, we've been able to have them for state court complaints do a case assessment based on the complaint alone, saying, and by the way, your client needs you, and here are the causes of action, here are the defenses, here are things that you want to do with it, here are exhibits you should ask for, or documents you should ask for. And again, all of this is happening behind the scenes with a whole sort of patchwork of APIs and Gen AI tools and so on, working together to make our attorneys' lives easier and to help out our client, because they're going to get a much more thorough reach out from us where we could say, we really can help you. Here's how we could do it and so on. So that's a real fun one. It's been a big win for our attorneys. We're also using a Gen AI tool for some business of law use cases called Hebia, where we're essentially throwing a lot of stuff at it and then finding insights from it. So one of the things we wanted to look at is, can Gen AI help us make sure that our associates are as happy as they can be and as fulfilled as they can be? So we're putting in lots of information, including hours billed and collections and what office they're in and exit interviews from associates who left and went in-house and evaluations and things like that. And now we could actually query that and say, in our Kansas City office, what tends to make associates happy? Is it, do they like to work with 2 partners a week or 4 partners a week? And what's the magic number of hours before they feel like they're just overwhelmed and the maximum number of cases? Gen AI is so helpful for things like that because you just don't have the time to have humans go and cull through all that data, but tools like this are really, really good for it. We're also finally using Gen AI for some of our data analytics efforts. We've had systems in place for a long time now where we're trying to figure out, okay, we have a case with this judge, with this opposing counsel. These are the causes of action. It's in this venue. What do we think this case is going to look like in terms of how long it lasts? What do we think it might settle for? Will it settle before discovery, in the middle of depositions? How many depositions? And that, it was a pretty good tool, but it takes a lot of time and manual effort from people on my team and from the attorneys to be feeding it information. Gen AI is really helpful for that. If we could now point Gen AI at some of our internal systems and point it at the complaint, it can minimize the amount of human effort needed for some of these projects. And no one has the time to do these projects as thoroughly as they'd like, especially the business of law ones, but Gen AI is really good for it. And you really now can get great insights where we can say, hey, we have this powerful tool. And yes, our attorneys think, my knee-jerk reaction or my gut reaction from experiencing these kinds of cases is X, Y, and Z, but we also ran it through our tool. And we're anticipating from that settlement in the range of this, and it's going to cost this much and this and that. Take all that together, and now we have a much more thorough picture of what we think is likely to happen in the cases that we handle. And we're a litigation firm, right? We're handling cases all the time. It's really helpful for us to have tools like this at our disposal to make us even better at it. So lots of stuff I threw at you all, but Gen AI is just so broad, so powerful. It touches on so many different things. And there's so many great companies out there that you could work with and partner with, whether it's for off-the-shelf tools or tools that you can help build with them working as a partner. And that's a lot of fun. And there's a lot out there for CAM folks like me.
So, Evan, thank you. That was fantastic. A lot of doses of inspiration in there. What I especially love is that while your employer is a litigation-focused law firm, only some of your use cases are even dancing in the arena of litigation. A lot of it is, as you said, business of law and managing your law firm, your employees, large sets of data. So that really applies across the board, really, to any organization that's looking at how to run itself better. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, so last but not least, Nicole, welcome to the stage. If you could please share with us just a little bit about you and tell us what use case are you going to share with us for AI today?
Perfect. Thanks so much. It's sort of humbling to come after everybody who has spoken so far, but I'll tell you just a little bit about myself. I'm assuming you guys can see my slides okay. And if that's not the case.
Yes, Nicole, although you may want to go into slideshow
Perfect.
mode so
do
that
that
it's
right
bigger
now.
for everyone. You know,
Excellent.
take pity on our aging eyes.
Okay. So hopefully,
Oh, well, actually use slideshow up top.
Swap
okay,
tablet. Oh,
there we go. I'm sorry, I have multiple screens and multiple things happening right now, and I'm seeing multiple things,
Perfect.
but I think we're good
It's
right now.
perfect
Okay, so
now.
here we are. So much for a technology presentation, right? By somebody who's clearly not that great at running her own technology. Okay, so about me, I am actually a practicing litigator. I've been practicing for more than 30 years. I started in large law firms. I spent the first 15 years of my career at Cat & Mushin in Chicago. And then I took the proverbial leap of faith, and I left there in 2008 to join forces with some other large firm escapees, as we call ourselves, to form a firm called Valorum Law Group. And that firm was formed to bring alternative fee arrangements to the marketplace at a time in 2008 when nobody really was talking about alternative fees. We ran Valorum for 10 years and became known as a little bit of the rebels or the positive disruptors, if you will, in the industry. And we're lucky to then be introduced often and to join forces with other innovators in the legal industry. And that's how we ended up meeting the people at Elevate, including Kunoor and Liam Brown, who's the founder. And we talked about the fact that most legal service providers or law companies at the time couldn't provide the practice of law. And yet, for Valorum, a very small boutique, we couldn't take advantage of all the things that a legal service provider like Elevate could offer, like a global workforce and technology that they build and discovery groups and legal operations. And so together we decided to join forces, and we formed what is now the integrated law firm within Elevate. So I run that law firm, and so we have a bunch of practicing lawyers who sometimes operate in the traditional sense and sometimes operate in more of the business and legal service provider sense. But in doing that, because of that sort of unique ecosystem that we live in, we have the opportunity to look at what our clients, our customers are doing and try to build efficiencies into that. So for me, because we have such a large litigation bend, we have been able to look and see, is there anything in the litigation space that needs improvement and that doesn't really exist out there, but that requires practicing lawyers and hopefully requires technology or innovation as well. So when AI came along, which I know a lot of people are going to tell me AI came along a really long time ago, but when it came along in the sense that co-counsel, OpenAI, all of that became more public, and large language models in particular, it really rocked our world because we were able to then look and see, okay, how can we take the use of AI and build certain services or offerings around that? So I want to talk to you about one service that we built around an AI tool that we joined forces with for one particular customer at the time, and now it's available for all of our customers. The tool relates to written discovery responses. And what we were asked to do is to bring some innovation to just that portion of a litigation case, which is responding to interrogatories, document requests, requests to admit in repeat types of cases, cases for a large Fortune 50 packaging company. And so what we did was we asked if we could join forces with a technology company that focuses on AI, and they were game for that. And so we partnered with then Casetext, now owned by Thomson Reuters, but we worked with them to develop a tool. And once we developed the tool, we then developed an end-to-end workflow. I'm going to show you a little bit what the tool looks like, just so you get a little bit of a sense of what it looks like. For those of you who work in co-counsel, it will look very familiar to a lot of the skills that they have. What we did for our client, and we do for all of our clients who then use this, is we build a standalone repository that is only theirs. We took all of the discovery responses that we could get our hands on for the last, say, 2 to 3 years to build a working repository. And then we trained the tool on that repository. So it got to know what were some of the requests that were being asked over and over again. What are some of the objections? How are these being answered, or how were they answered in the past? We worked closely with the client to come up with standardized responses where we could, but mostly we started to train the tool to recognize this is asking for this, even if the words are different in each request. And over time, what we've gotten the tool to do is to kick back a first draft of responses for our lawyers to then work with. So it's never going to be something that you would just serve and file. But working with the lawyers, it gives us a huge leg up on drafting from scratch every time we get interrogatories or document requests or requests to admit. So this is what the tool looks like. We've obviously blacked out some confidential information, but it will give you objections. It will give you a response to the extent that a response can be given. As you can understand, for interrogatories, sometimes it will ask a question that hasn't really been asked before. It's very case specific. But what it will do there is it will give you pretty much as you need, except for the relevant information. So let's say a request is asking, who was the supervisor who trained employees on this policy? It might not have that specific supervisor's name. That might not have ever come up in a prior request, but it will be able to give objections if they're warranted, and then also to give as much as the response can give, and then it will leave a blank for the person's name. So even that much saves a lot of time for our lawyers when they're responding to discovery. In addition, just to make sure that we were able to drill down on how is the tool coming up with the response that it's giving, there's a feature in the tool that allows us to look and see what are the top 5 responses that the tool drew from in coming up with the response that it gave for this particular request. We can go into that. That's what this screen is showing you. And then we can look and actually drill down and click on the actual response. We can see the prior response. We can review it, and we can decide, oh, this case was actually it's not the same. It's not applicable. Then we can uncheck that in this portion, and then we can ask the tool to run it again. So there's a lot of ways to use the tool and to make sure that the tool is actually getting you what you need. I will go back for a second to the end-to-end workflow. So we paired the tool, as I said, with our lawyers, but also with some of Elevate's technology. Elevate has a managed request tool. So we pair a lot of the technology that we use using AI with other technology that we have, and then obviously with the typical workflows that we use with our clients. And in this situation, we work with outside counsel that our client is using, and we also work with their in-house counsel, because occasionally their in-house counsel will be handling matters directly. And so this type of tool can then work both for law firms who are responding to document requests or to interrogatories on a regular basis for their own clients. It also can work for companies where we set up repositories, I've indicated. The results have been pretty staggering. This was for the first 6 months. We're now, getting closer to a year, but we've reviewed a lot of discovery requests, and on average, the reduction in time for our attorneys is 30%, and in some instances, it's even more, particularly in run-of-the-mill cases where the questions that are being asked are very similar to prior questions that would have been asked in similar type of cases. That's when it's pretty easy for the tool to just spit out a very accurate first response. So I would say 30% on average, sometimes 50%. Definitely a huge game changer for us. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully I've left a little bit of time, because Farrah may want to weigh in, or we might want to open it up to questions. But all I will say at the end of the day is that finding uses of AI is just, for us, really incredible, because I don't think it's replacing our lawyers. I think it's just making them more efficient. And it's enabling companies and law firms to standardize responses across multiple pieces of litigation, which is always good, to have standard objections, or to find yourself pulling from similar information so that you don't have a lot of disparate responses floating around. So that's it for me.
Thank you. That was terrific. Thank you, Nicole. And what I really enjoyed about hearing from all of our speakers is you can tell that the application of AI/generative AI is really at the beginning of the beginning in some areas, more in the middle in others, and well developed in yet others. But what's exciting is that everyone is now looking at ways to apply it to their own practice, to their own organization's needs. If you're a client-facing organization, doing it for your clients. And I love hearing all these different creative ways that everyone's approaching it. Now, I did have a question that neatly dovetails with the beginning of a comment and question that we saw in the chat. Thank you, Andrew, for asking your question about pitfalls of using AI. We've all heard the horror stories about the made-up hallucinated cases and the lawyers getting taken to task for citing cases that don't exist. But other than that, Andrew was asking, are there other pitfalls that people have experienced? And if so, how were they identified? And I responded in the chat to Andrew and would like to throw out there, not so much a pitfall, but a blocker. There's this patchwork emerging, it seems, of clients, some who say, have at it, others who say, well, you have to tell me, and others still who say, no, you can't. So if anyone is brave enough to want to take that set of questions, any thoughts on pitfalls in AI and how to navigate that not yet solidified approach to whether you have to disclose or avoid using AI?
I think transparency is always the key. So, just sticking in my lane today on the contract side, the transparency is key. How does the process work? What are you doing? Nobody is interested in answering critical questions for their business without understanding how the process works. But also that there is, as Nicole pointed out, the human element of validating and ensuring that the AI is acting in the way that you intend it to act. So for me, it's transparency and then validation.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think we've definitely seen, I think when it all kind of came out, I'd say last year, customers were like, whoa, 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 you cannot use AI. And then it was like, wait, but we're already using AI in all these other ways. And, And so I think we've seen a little evolution in the last year where now customers are updating their guidelines around use of AI, and we're seeing them allow it more. And they're definitely putting in some guardrails and safeguards, but definitely look at your customer billing guidelines or standards because it's in there, and I think they're getting more comfortable. But I absolutely agree, transparency and I mean disclosure is necessary, and for them to just understand the use case. They will be considered with, I think, that question, right, around accuracy and whether it works. So make sure that as you've tested AI, that you have a response to, yes, we've tested it and it's X% accurate, and we have a human in the loop. So yes, you're going to get something that is as good, if not better than, pre-use of tools like this.
So thank you. Those are great answers. And I appreciate another comment came in that says the real pitfall is not recognizing that lawyers and staff are using AI stealth and under the radar. And I've heard this concept thrown about that for years, people worried about shadow IT. And now there's talk of shadow AI. It's happening, but it's just not happening in a controlled and safe environment. So a new application of an old concern. I do see we've got another question, and thank you, Terry, for the group. And that question is, in implementing AI solutions, do you work with the willing only, or do you enforce use? And how do you bring the doubters along?
So I could jump in quickly on this one if you want.
Yeah.
One of the things I'll say, at least that's a really positive story, is that these AI tools have been the easiest tools to implement and get buy-in for from the attorneys, from the most junior attorneys to the most senior attorneys. They take to this so much more, and they have taken to this so much more, likely because it's so easy to use and talk to, and you communicate with it and just tell it what you want, and it can come up with an answer. And so it's been a lot easier from that respect to get people to use it. The other thing I'll say is for those who tend to push back a little bit, I just talk with them, and I have this conversation all the time, and I explain to them that 90 to 95% of the RFPs that we're now seeing from our clients are specifically saying, tell us how you're using technology to be better, smarter, faster. Are you using AI and data analytics to be better lawyers, to come up with better predictions, to blah, blah, blah. Explain how you're innovative. So we're no longer in a space where it's just sort of a nice to have, and you could just keep doing it the way you're doing it. Attorney who've been doing it like this for the last 20 years or whatever, clients are now expecting for us to responsibly, appropriately, and reasonably use whatever technology we can to get them the best answers the most efficiently, to be the best advocates, to be, the most tech savvy attorneys out there. And when they actually look and say, wait, oh, my client's asking for this? Okay, yeah, no, guess I'm going to use it. That's the most powerful way to convince people who might otherwise be a little reluctant to try something new.
That seems like a great place for us to wrap. This was a great conversation. We hope that those of you who joined today got some inspiration for application of AI in your own lives, in your own practice, in your own organizations. There will be a recording available, and Debbie will also have information about futures seminars, which we hope you will join. Thank you again, everyone, for making time during your day to join. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. And before you drop, kindly take this survey. Thanks all.